What's going on, y'all? Chuck Nunface here. Look familiar? We're taking a second look. Gonna revisit the Gen 3 Microtech Combat Troodon. I've been carrying this. I've been using it. I've been using it a ton. I'll just go ahead and preface that. Don't call this a review. I haven't been using this non-stop or anything like that, but I have been carrying it. I have been enjoying it. I have been thinking about it. And so I wanted to just add some additional thoughts from my first impressions video. Well, first of all, just kind of go over it again. It's a big boy. Size comparison. The other knife I have on me today is the Hinderer Project X. So, I mean, we're looking at a 4-inch blade on this. It's not small. Yeah, definitely not a small knife. So it's also got that double edge. Top half is serrated, as you can see. Main cutting edge that you would normally use is going to be plain, unserrated. There's a lot of, I kind of wanted to approach this from an EDC sense, okay? Now, this configuration of blade certainly inspires more of a tactical theme, I would say, without question. When you look at this, you see, the dagger profile, that medial ridge, more on that. And then, those aggressive serrations on the top, that aggressive point right there, as you can see. It certainly is more of a tactical themed knife, I would say. But from an EDC standpoint, this knife, in particular, more generally speaking, I would say, out the front knives are an excellent choice for a lot of people. If that's what you choose to go with, whether your locality allows, automatic knives, that's a different story. Whether you care if they allow it or not, that's certainly another topic altogether. But for those that choose to carry them or are thinking about carrying one for EDC, I think there's a lot of value in the OTF simply because it is truly a one-handed knife. Now, yeah, this knife is also one-handed operation, okay? Or any other, locking folder is typically going to be a single-hand operation knife. It's not hard to do. Disengage the lock bar, close the knife, back in your pocket. You need it again, flip it out. There you go. Pretty easy to use. This is going to be truly a one-handed knife in the sense that it's almost no thought. Take it out, open it, cut what you need to cut, retract the blade, put it back in your pocket. It's very simple to do. If you have to do something with your offhand, if you have to hold something in place, you have to manipulate something, it's very no-nonsense. Now, granted, knife guys, listen, we all know how to manipulate a blade, one-handed. It's second nature to us. It's not really a big deal, but it does take one less thing to think about, off the table. It takes it out of the equation where you have to make sure. All you got to do is just pull that switch back and the knife is closed. It's truly a single-handed design. And there's a lot to say about that. There's a lot of benefit to that. Now, I think from an EDC standpoint, a single edge, this being the Combat Troodon, but you can look at any really OTF, whether it's from Microtech or Guardian Tactical or Heretic or whoever the OTF is from. A single edge for EDC purposes, for most people, is probably going to be the choice. Simply because that's what most people are going to gravitate towards, but also it is going to be a better performer. It's going to be a better slicer as a single edge. Because when you think about this, going back to that medial ridge right there, you have a very short area. Getting a lot of glare, but it is what it is. You have a very short, narrow area before you meet the center line. So your bevel only has a short distance to travel. In this case, it's probably, it's probably less than half an inch. And so you're going to get pretty thick behind the edge pretty quickly. Whereas, once again, let's take a look at the Hinderer that I have. Your grind starts way up here. So you have all this space before you have to start thickening up your edge. Now this one's still a little bit thick behind the edge. I mean, it's pretty thick blade stock. It's more of a robust knife, but you kind of get what I'm saying, I think, is you have all this space to travel. Whereas with this, you only have a short space before you have to transition into your flat. if that makes any sense. I think it does. I think you all understand what I'm saying. And so a single edge is probably going to be a better choice. However, there's a lot to be said for a double-edged blade, a dagger-style blade in an OTF, simply because, you know, you have that option with an OTF where that blade is going to fully retract into the handle, and so you can have that top half sharpened completely without, you know, hurting yourself, worrying about hurting yourself. Now, if you're going to do that with a folding knife, a traditional folding knife, you need to have, this would all need to be covered by the handle. Now, there are a few knives out there that do that. They tend to look a little awkward, but it can be done with this style of knife. But even the ones that you may see out there, and I can't think of any off, I think Paragon has one. Paragon, I believe, is the name of the company, where they make that pinch style where you open up the scales and then it's a gravity knife that comes down. I believe they have one that's a true double edge. But it's much more of a difficult from a design standpoint to do that with a traditional folding knife, whereas with an out the front, it's very simple to incorporate that second edge. Now, in doing so, I think having the serrations makes a heck of a lot of sense, because you can use the bottom half for your everyday cutting tasks, you know, breaking down boxes. We can do that certainly with the serrated portion as well. But yeah, you'll use this for most of your cutting tasks. But if you need to cut some rope or some harder materials, something like that, you want to go through some zip ties, you know, you have your serrated edge right there up top, which you can use just by turning the knife over like that, and you have access to the serrated blade. So I think there's a lot of value in that as well. So yeah, I don't want this to be a really lengthy video. So just in conclusion, I think there's a lot of pros to using an OTF from an EDC standpoint. Is this particular configuration going to be the best configuration for EDC? For most people, probably not. But I do think there are a lot of positive aspects to OTFs in general for EDC, for this knife in particular for EDC as well. Especially if you're working with, you know, in your daily life, you're going to encounter a lot of different types of materials that may need cutting. And sliciness, for lack of a better term, isn't going to be the most important thing to you. It's a very versatile option for you to have, because you have true one-handed operation, very easy to operate, and then you also have the option of switching to serrations for some different types of cutting materials, some different mediums that you may need to go through. And lastly, in regards to the Gen 3 Combat Troodons, whatever you want to say, I have seen some people, I think Edged Mindset, one of his viewers, posed the question to him, you know, is it more of a danger with the push button being lighter than the earlier generations? You know, and it's a worry that your kids, if you have children, small children in your house, that they may be able to actuate the knife easier. So firstly, I would say it is easier. It's much easier to activate the blade both out and in on this knife than it is in the previous generations. You had to really develop, you know, Combat Troodon thumb, this muscle right here, this muscle group in the thumb, to really actuate that knife. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even be able to do it when they first pick it up. This is significantly easier to do. Now, as far as that being a safety concern with children in the house, I mean, I suppose so, but what do you know, are you concerned about this? Are you concerned about, what do you do with your regular folding knives? Or your regular fixed blade knives? You know, it kind of seems to me like a non-issue. I mean, it really, if you're really all that concerned, you should probably just teach your kids better about your knives. It kind of sounds like a you problem as the parent, rather than the manufacturer's problem. You know, I have knives in my office that are kind of sitting out on the desk. I have some on top of my dresser. I have some in the cases and things like that. My kids know not to go and grab my knives. They just know. They don't do that. And yeah, I allow them to handle them and things like that when I'm supervising them. But they know not to go and grab my knives and play with them. They know that they're not toys, that they're sharp, they can get hurt, that they need to know how to use it, and they need to have dad around, or mom, in order to use the knife. So I really think the whole safety issue with young children around, I really don't think that is incumbent. The onus is not on the manufacturer. The onus is on the end user. In this day and age, a lot of people, I don't think knife people in particular, fall into that category, but we live in a society where everybody wants to point the finger and blame everybody else, and I really don't think the onus is on the manufacturer to make sure that your kids don't get into your knives. I think that falls upon the parent. So that is the last little bit I'll say about that. But in closing, great knife overall. Very happy with this design. Very happy with what Microtech's been doing. And I think overall, if you're interested in OTFs as an EDC option, I think you should definitely check it out. Maybe not the Combat Troodon, maybe something that's a little bit more your size, your speed, your style. There's a lot of options out there. The world is your oyster. We are currently living in the golden age of cutlery. We have been for several years, and I think it's going to continue for a while. There's a lot of great options out there. So that's going to do it for me. Thanks for checking out the video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button. I certainly would appreciate it. Drop a comment. I would definitely like to hear what you have to say on the subject, and share that video out there, and I would appreciate all of those things.